Hey Paisanos, it is I, Mickey Saturn. Just want to do a quick video here. I hope it's quick, we'll see. It's basically my E3 reaction video, and I was going to do like a detailed one, except that like Microsoft's conference and Sony's conference were so unambiguous that I almost feel like there's nothing to say about them. I mean, Microsoft has completely fucked up, and they're fucked, and good riddance to them. We'll see if they even make another Xbox after this one that they're doing right now. They may just drop the branding, or they may just pivot it to, not even try to make it, explicitly a gaming machine in the same way that like an iPad is not marketed to gamers. There's no big iPad conference at E3, you know what I'm saying? But even though there are games on the iPad, it could be like that. Whatever. They've completely fucked themselves. Sony, you hit it out of the park. I know I was in my prediction video, if you go and watch it, I was saying that I wanted to hear about this because I had a feeling that Sony was going to have similar restrictions to Microsoft, and I wasn't the only one. I heard a lot of other people who were, some of them I really respected, people like Chris Kohler and people like that, saying that it was going to be very similar on Xbox, on a PS4, as to what Xbox had. I really was getting that feeling. I had like a sinking feeling. Man, I was so happy when Sony comes out and just puts the pain on Microsoft, like just, It was a wonderful moment. And, I mean, what more needs to be said, really? I mean, we didn't see The Last Guardian, I was disappointed, then the next day I was like, that game's dead. Then the next day the guy's like, it's on hiatus, and I was like, yep, it's dead. And then, the other guy was like, oh no, it's still in active development, and I was like, come on, stop pretending. This game is vaporware. It's never coming out. It's very disappointing. On the other hand, Final Fantasy 15 turned out to be Versus 13, just given a new name, looks really sharp. I kind of got half of what I wanted. If you look at my third-party video where I talk, prediction wishlist video where I talk about Square, I talked about wanting the new Final Fantasy to be more of a classic feel, of that kind of classic fantasy feel, and not so much of a science fiction feel. I didn't get that. On the other hand, I also said I hope they've learned some of the lessons from The Last Guardian and they've streamlined the combat and made it faster paced and more of a, I guess you could call it more of an action system, and I did get that, so, and it looks really sharp. So I'm pretty intrigued by that. Anyway, there was some other cool stuff, but everyone's opinion on all of those things seems to be unanimous. And I'm no different. Sony nailed it. Microsoft totally screwed themselves. They showed no games I care about. And even Killer Instinct, I heard weird things about it afterwards. Is that game free to play? I heard conflicting stuff. It sounds like it's possibly free to play and you download all the characters individually? Wow. It's like Microsoft hates itself. So, I have not a whole lot to say about any of that. Capcom didn't show a new Mega Man game, that's disappointing, but thought they might do that. I guess their big announcement that they teased us with was Dead Rising 3, a franchise which they have totally fucked up by the looks of it. I don't know why I expected anything different from Capcom. Okay, enough of that, though. Mainly, I just want to talk about Nintendo. They're the only one that it's kind of like there's something to say about this, because going into the conference, I felt like Nintendo had a lot to prove, and they had a real opportunity to seize a lot of momentum from Microsoft. Microsoft is kind of floundering. If Microsoft crashes and burns, that's going to leave a vacuum. And if nothing changes, Sony is going to completely fill that vacuum. Like, Sony is just going to and suck up all of those displaced Microsoft fans. And this is a huge opportunity for Nintendo to try to grab some of those people. But it's a big uphill battle for Nintendo to do that, because Nintendo's not going to be able to offer Call of Duty. I mean, supposedly the new Call of Duty is going to be on the Wii U. Ghosts, they said, is coming to the Wii U. Okay, and Nintendo's not going to have all the EA Sports and stuff. I mean, the bottom line is, if you're a big shooter fan, and I think that's a majority of the Xbox audience, Nintendo will never be able to offer you really very much. Even the first-person shooters they might someday make, like a Metroid Prime 4 or something, is not really a shooter. You know, it's in first person, but even Nintendo calls it a first-person adventure. It would be fascinating to see a Nintendo first-party truly do a shooter. Like, it would be interesting to see, like, Nintendo's take on the military shooter, or something like that. But it's also, like, so incompatible with what the company does, you know? They need third parties to deliver that content, and third parties don't want to work with Nintendo, and that's what I want to talk about. So what I want to talk about is this video they showed. I was a little underwhelmed by it, and I like all the games that they showed. Like, I liked what I saw of everything. I saw some people complaining about the Mario game. I saw a lot of people say, oh, I thought it would be Galaxy 3. I want Galaxy 3. What is this shit? Folks should have been watching my Mario videos, because if they had been, they would have known that they were never going to do a Galaxy 3, because Mario games come in pairs. They do 2 games in a style, and then they move on. They followed that pattern forever, going all the way back to the original NES Mario, and I see no reason to expect that to change. And sure enough, they did not do a Galaxy 3. Instead, they did a 3D Land style game. The open question in my mind is whether or not this game pairs with the 3DS 3D Land or not. Traditionally, the console Marios have just been totally separate from the handheld Marios. So, you might say not, but it is so similar to 3D Land, even having the same naming convention. And the 3DS is powerful. I mean, it's a 3D Mario game on there. It's basically the same. So, I start to wonder, maybe it's not different, So maybe after 3D World, maybe then we'll see a completely new Mario style. Which would be interesting, and was what I was expecting, because I did not see them going with the 3D Land style exactly, although if you look in my video, I do say that you can look to 3D Land to kind of see the direction they're going, and I was way more literally right than I even thought. I didn't mean it literally, I just meant probably it wasn't going to be like an open world type game, because they don't seem to be going in that direction. But man, you could have looked at 3D Land and seen exactly where they were going. It's crazy. It's cool. It's not going to impress anyone to the point of selling any systems, and I think Mario could have been a system seller. Mario Kart 8 looks really cool. I like what they're doing with that. That's probably not a system seller. Smash Brothers will be a system seller for some people. Bayonetta 2 is going to be a system seller for a few people. X, the new Monolith game, also system seller. All of those games in 2014, so nothing coming into Christmas except Wind Waker HD, a remake, and Mario 3D World. And I was just like, is this really it? Donkey Kong Country, we found out what Retro was doing. It's another Donkey Kong Country game. I really like the DKC returns, so I can't really say that I'm unhappy. On the other hand, I was kind of hoping to see Star Fox come back. And I was thinking maybe that was what Retro was doing. I know a lot of people wanted Metroid. I don't really... I felt like that series needs a break for a little while. So I think they'll come back to Metroid Prime 4 or something like that, but a little bit later. I was hoping that they were going to kind of revive another franchise that had stagnated, like either Star Fox or F-Zero or something like that. But instead they're just rehashing Donkey Kong. I'm sure it'll be great. I saw that swimming is back. That's cool. So I expect it to be really good, but by the time we're done with that, they're probably going to have to start making Metroid. So I wonder if we'll see a Star Fox or F-Zero. Well, at any rate, we won't see it coming out of Retro, I don't think, which is too bad. And all the way around, it's just kind of like a little underwhelming, and I was just thinking, like, what did Nintendo... It's as though Nintendo is, like, totally oblivious to everything that's going on. This is not the first time I've had that feeling, But it's also as though, like, Nintendo is deliberately trying not to appear like they are sweating it. Like, that's kind of how I read it. Like, Nintendo doesn't care about Microsoft and Sony hitting each other. Like, why didn't Nintendo talk about the fact that the Wii U also has, no restrictions on used games, no DRM type stuff, and the Wii U has free online. All the online stuff, the multiplayer, everything is free. A lot of people noticed that Sony basically said that PlayStation Plus is going to be required if you want to play like a multiplayer game on the PS4. So the multiplayer is not free anymore on the new PlayStation. This is an advantage Nintendo has potentially, but they didn't say anything about that. And is that because they pre-recorded the video? And one of the downsides of pre-recording the video is that they didn't know, exactly what was going to happen, so they couldn't be too specific about that stuff. Like maybe Nintendo didn't know if Sony was going to have the same policies as Microsoft or not. Who knows? It could be that, or it could be that Nintendo is just like totally outside of that conversation. Like, you shouldn't even think of Nintendo in the same space as Sony and Microsoft. And there's sort of a legitimate reason to see them that way, but it's also kind of at odds with reality. I mean, the fact is that Nintendo is compared to Sony and Microsoft every day. So to just ignore that, and to not talk about the way that comparison could be made favorable, instead of letting, it's like they let the competition control that comparison, and the story is Nintendo's system is weak, and not as good, not as graphically good. And that's true, but Nintendo could do a better job of, like, taking a proactive measure to control that narrative, or at least have their version of that talks about, hey, we got free online, we got cool features that you'll only see with us, we got an innovative controller, second time in a row that we've done something interesting there, and you have to get our system if you want to experience some of the cool stuff that allows for. And, they could kind of seize that a little more, and they just don't. And then, so that's weird to me. And then it's like you look at the video and the games that they show, and it's just like, I guess, I was like, I guess this is it, like this is all they're working on. And in a way that doesn't surprise me, because if you think about it, I mean, how many games in a year did Nintendo make on the Wii? I don't know off the top of my head, but if you just, I don't have like a hard figure in front of me, but just think about it. In a typical year of the Wii life cycle, Nintendo's first-party development produced like how many major titles? Like a handful, right? Like 6 or something? So why would you think they could do more than that on the Wii U going into HD? You know what I mean? This is their shift into HD. They're almost certainly going to make fewer first-party titles than they did for the Wii. They have to, because it is more difficult to make HD games. Now you could say, well, they could hire a bunch of people, but Nintendo historically has been very reluctant to do that. They don't like to hire lots of people. This is, instead, what they do is they partner with a bunch of third parties, like when they have Namco working on Smash Brothers, when they had Sega working on F-Zero and stuff like that. They were already doing that, because they're actually a very small company. I mean, and that's not... So think about all the first-party games that they are releasing this year. Nintendo Land, I'm talking about in the 12 months since the system came out. So basically by the end of this Christmas, let's say. In the first full kind of year of the system. They'll have done Nintendo Land, New Super Mario U, they'll have done Pikmin 3, they'll have done Wind Waker HD, they'll have done Donkey Kong Country Returns, Tropical Freeze, whatever, and they'll have done the 3D Mario game. That's 6 titles. 6, like, major titles. And then they published a handful of other titles, right? They did, well, I don't know, Nintendo internally developed, I guess, the Wario game, so that's 7 sort of major titles. And I guess, technically, Wii Play U and Wii Fit U are coming out this year, right? But let's not even talk about those. Let's keep it only for hardcore gamers. 7 major titles, and then they published stuff like Lego City, Wonderful 101, and I think a few others that I'm forgetting. But I mean, when you put it like that, and then you compare them to like anyone else, I mean, I can't think of 7 major Ubisoft games in the last 12 months. It's like Ubisoft makes Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, like Rayman or something. I mean, Ubisoft makes like 3 or 4 games a year, not 6 or 7. And yet I hear all these people saying Nintendo's got to make more games. Nintendo forgot to make games. I hear people saying that. Like, Nintendo launched the Wii U, only problem was they forgot to have games. Well, no, they didn't. They've made as many games as they can possibly be expected to make in this year. they cannot do better than this, I don't think. Like, this is my theory. My theory is, this is actually the best they can do. This is them at 100% capacity, especially when you figure that they're also making 3DS games. This is total 100% working as fast as they can to get Wii U games finished as quickly as possible. That's what you're seeing. It's going to be 5 games a year from them. That's it. That's all they'll ever be able to do, because that's all any other major developer does in a single year in the HD era. And that's just the reality, and they needed third-party support, and third parties refused to work with them. They had a little thing in their video where they tried to show the third parties, and, you know, some of that stuff is going to be interesting. You know, like I'm interested in the Deus Ex Special Edition, but that was going to be exclusive, and now it is exclusive no more. Nope. Never mind, not exclusive. And it's just, you know, the third parties are just frustrating, and I feel like, you know, people say, well, Nintendo needs to do more to attract third parties, and once again, to me it's like, is there more they can do? I mean, we don't really know what they are and aren't doing, but for a long time, for example, for many years, the story was, well, third parties don't like to release on Nintendo because Nintendo's first-party games seize all the spotlight and take up all the sales, and no third party can compete. So, you know, Mario comes out, and you know, if you're a third party, you just get steamrolled by Nintendo's first-party games, and so they don't like that. They prefer Sony, where Sony has some first-party studios, but Sony's first-party games are just sort of one among many, and Sony doesn't kind of just overwhelm the third parties. So this is the storyline of how third parties are uncomfortable on Nintendo systems. Okay, so wouldn't a 12-month period in which there are no Nintendo first-party games be ideal? But all of a sudden it's all, well, I mean, we can't release our games on that platform. I mean, the platform hasn't sold. Nintendo's got to release those first-party games to get the platform out the door before they want third-party support. I mean, it's just a shifting set of excuses no matter what they do. And I think third parties have pretty much written Nintendo off as a company. Not just the Wii U, but the entire company. And I think it really started with the GameCube. I mean, the GameCube was comparable to the PS2 in terms of power. You know, arguably slightly better. And it did not get anywhere near the level of third-party support that the PS2 got. And the Wii sold 100 million units and got almost no third-party support. You know, I mean, it got adequate third-party support, sort of, in a way, right? Like, if you're a hardcore gamer and you get a Wii and you know what to look for, and you can kind of dig through it all, you can find a variety of third-party games in many different genres, and there's like a handful of really good games in any given genre for that system. But it should have had overwhelming third-party support. People should have been, like, excited to put their games on that system, and they weren't. Why? Well, they didn't sell very well when they put them on the system. Well, why didn't they sell very well? You know, it's all just this, you know, I think there's just this attitude on the part of third parties that they cannot succeed on a Nintendo platform. And you see that continuing with the Wii U, and Nintendo leaves this big open space, apparently thinking, you know, right, like Rayman Legends is going to come out, and these other important third-party games are going to come out, and this is like a big, you know, Nintendo had EA up on stage a couple years ago talking about their unprecedented partnership and all this shit. You know, they were trying to get third-party support. They didn't neglect that. They didn't blow that off. I've seen Nintendo try to attract third parties the best way they can, and they never have an event without talking about third parties and giving spotlight to those people and having representatives from Ubisoft on stage to talk about this or that. They do that every time, and those third parties do not care. Like, Nintendo could do all of that, and it doesn't matter, because they don't want to work with Nintendo. They aren't listening to what Nintendo has to tell them. They have already made up their minds, before the system even comes out, that they're not going to really support it, because it's Nintendo. And they feel like they have a history with Nintendo, and they've got that figured out, and it becomes this terrible catch-22 that Nintendo can never overcome. Because it's like, they can either make a glut of first-party games, and then everyone will say, well, there's no space left because, you know, we don't have any way to compete with Mario and Zelda. Or they can make very few first-party games, and then they say, well, there's no install base. Well, third-party publishers, that's your job to make some of the system-selling games are supposed to come from you guys. And Nintendo said that. You know, I mean, when Nintendo did all of that promoting of Rayman Legends, they were treating that as one of their major games. That was a chance for Ubisoft to be like one of the major this was, I mean, that's what that is. And everyone says, I don't know, it's just, poor Nintendo, they cannot win. So I kind of looked at this video that they did for E3, and I was like, it's a little underwhelming, and I actually was thinking, they have no incentive to hold back from us. So I was like, this is it. This is pretty much what they have, at least through Christmas, and this is several of their major titles for next year. And unless third parties just spontaneously change their mind, which I don't think is likely to happen, I mean, this is what we're going to be looking at. But then, weirdly, I started hearing, first of all, I was reminded about Yarn Yoshi, which they didn't show in that video, so there is a game that they didn't even talk about. And then I read that they almost talked about the new Wii U Zelda game, but that at the last minute they decided not to talk about that, and to hold that off for later. And I was like, what the fuck, Nintendo? Do you not understand the situation you're in? What are you doing holding back? And I was reminded by someone that they did this last year. They had their kind of underwhelming E3 conference, and then like 2 weeks later they announced like 2 games, and the 3DS XL is coming out in like a Nintendo Direct, and everyone just facepalmed. Like, is that what's about to happen? Like in 2 weeks they're going to be like, by the way, Wii U price cut, and here's the Wii U Zelda game, and let's talk about Yarn Yoshi. And you're just going to be going, why didn't you put this into your freaking E3 conference video? So I don't know what to make of it. It's like Nintendo, I don't know, there's so many, they have every opportunity is there for them. I mean, if they can't, even with the difficulties they have with third parties, still, every opportunity is there, and if they can't capitalize on that, it's like just bad management. I mean, they could be so much smarter about how they use the eShop, for example. Well, not just the eShop, but the Virtual Console specifically. They could turn the Wii U into like the ultimate retro gaming machine. That would be one thing they could do to kind of fill the void in between their major first-party releases, which I'm starting to think are probably going to be like 90% of what gets released on this console. So I think we're looking at, the whole console library may only have like 100 games on it or something. It makes me think of like the Neo Geo or some system like that is like a really niche system. And it's like if you love Neo Geo games, it's cool, but that's really doesn't have a huge library. This is, this may be like that, It's going to be like if you love Nintendo games, it succeeds. And, it has like a handful of third-party games. I don't know, man. I hope Nintendo gets their act together because I think they're an important voice in the industry. They're not part of the kind of stupid culture that gets Dead Rising 3 fucked up or whatever, Like, that would never happen to Nintendo, to the Nintendo games, to their system and stuff. They're not really part of that, but, and that's good. If it weren't for Nintendo, there would be no one left to protect, like, this more kind of colorful, you might say, attitude in gaming. And it would just be gone. Because there is literally no one but Nintendo still holding that flag. And Nintendo is also a company that drives a lot of innovation, Kinect, which is like this major feature now of the Xbox, was, I think, originally a reaction to the Wii. So even if you say the Wii failed in its own way, nevertheless, although it was also successful, right, in terms of sales, but it maybe failed to achieve the goal of kind of generating a new batch of gamers who are like loyal to Nintendo. That didn't really happen, did it? But nevertheless, still the whole industry pivoted around Nintendo. Like, they dominate the industry. It's like everyone pays attention to what they do and reacts to it. I don't know, they have like a really important role, and I don't want them to just totally crash and burn and fail. So I hope they can turn it around, but I'm a little concerned, I don't know. Anyways, this is basically what I thought coming out of E3. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks. And, yeah. Hey, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff everybody says. I gotta start saying it too, I guess. No, I really like reading comments, and, you know, it'd be cool to, like, have discussions, you know, with viewers and stuff. I mean, maybe people could, like, send me questions. If you want to have, like, I don't know, there could be, like, a thing where I could, like, I could talk about a topic that you bring up, maybe, you know, like if a viewer wanted me to talk about a particular thing or something. I don't know, something to think about. I'm open to that, so if you have any cool ideas along those lines, send me a message. Alright, until next time, Paisanos.